Bhaskara Award sir, who is a senior counsel and also eminent speaker, known speaker in Maharashtra, and also my colleague Mr. Sangram Desai, who is also the member of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa. So in order to conduct the 4 days club program, the Bar Council has already designed these lecture programs by organizing these 4 lectures of 4 eminent speakers. All of you know Bar Council recently successfully conducted 2 weeks BLEP program. BLEP means Basic Legal Education Program for the benefit of the advocates who are enrolled on or after January 2020, so that before enter in the profession, they can, beside the theory knowledge, get the knowledge as to the how to practice and what would be the etiquettes and ethics to be maintained while practicing in the court of law. So the further intention of the Bar Council in organizing such BLEP program, the newcomers who have step in the profession, they should get the pre-training before they enter inside the court. Bar Council has organized this club program through online video conference because considering the today's the situation, pandemic situation, COVID-19, and could not able to organize physical 4 days program which was designated in past. But beside this program, Bar Council also designed to organize physical club program after the lockdown period is over. I'm very happy to and also proud to announce that during the pandemic situation, so courts are not working and the advocates really whose economic condition is critical, the Bar Council had rendered help to almost more than 4,000 advocates by providing grocery in all over Maharashtra. So the needy advocates, such advocates whose financial position is critical, should not suffer, should not come in depression. So the Bar Council has provided such help after taking the historical decision in the meeting, video conference meeting organized by the Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa, and by taking unanimous decision in that respect. And in order to provide help, Bar Council had also sought permission to disperse the fund by seeking permission of Bar Council of India. So almost about the Bar Council has spent about 58 lakhs to provide the help to the needy advocates. Bar Council has also decided, in case the lockdown period is extended, to provide further help. So the Bar Council always concerned about not only to provide the legal education, but also to see that the advocate whose financial position is critical should not feel that bar council is not initiating uh, any program to provide help to the needy lawyers. While providing such help, bar council did not consider about the year of practice, etc. So without discrimination, the bar council has provided the help to the needy advocates. Bar council has also, under the welfare acts, provided help to various the advocates who were in really need of the financial help. But bar council also designed one bar council scheme apart from the scheme designed under the welfare act. And bar council is working hard and trying to see that the welfare of the advocates in future by through in the various sources, not through the under the welfare act, but designing a special or formulating a special scheme for the said for the same for to welfare of the advocates. Bar council in the past formulated the group insurance scheme, and the group insurance scheme which was formulated was got expired in on 16th April 2020. But due to this lockdown period, the said scheme is not yet renewed. But the bar council is trying hard to get the said scheme renewed by considering some further conditions which are laid down by the scheme formulated by this New India Insurance, and bar council will definitely work on that and introduce or formulate the said scheme that is definitely for the benefit and welfare of the advocates. So friends, I would request all of you that the said group insurance scheme is likely to be implemented and formulated on the either from 15th May or thereabout. So on behalf of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa, I request all of you to join the said scheme, group insurance scheme. And those, what is the group insurance scheme? You will get all the information on the website, the Bar Council website. If you open the Bar Council website, you will get all sort of information in that respect. So please look at the said scheme positively and see that the said scheme, group insurance scheme, is successful or successfully carried further in future. So Bar Council in that respect always acted in the interest of the advocates, welfare of the advocates. Don't be under the impression the Bar Council is not doing anything, but Bar Council is trying. It's hard to bring all the schemes which are beneficial and welfare of the advocates. Besides, to bring or render education and knowledge to the advocates, the Bar Council also in the trying to bring the level best to render the welfare of the advocates and legal fraternity. Now, once again, I shall extend my warm welcome to the eminent speaker, today's eminent speaker, Mr. Arjun Nimbalkar, and all the participants and my colleagues And this 4 days club program, if you these 4 days club program organized by the Bar Council of India, Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa get successful. Thanks to all of you once again. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, sir. I'm sure the legal fraternity at this juncture, after hearing you, would have breathed a sigh of relief that the legal BCMG is there to take care of us, to take care of the needs of the advocates who are in need of essential services. Thank you, sir. And as you said that this 4 days program will be spanned over the 2 weeks, that is today, tomorrow, and then next Friday, Saturday. And friends, when we talk about CLEP, the person who's the innovator, who's a brainchild behind this club, Honorable Shri Jain Jebhave sir, has to be heard, and he would like to explain to us what is the concept of club. So I request Jebhave sir to please take the virtual floor.
Thank you, Sujit. Honorable Chairman of the Bar Council, Advocate Subhash Gadge sir. Honorable Vice Chairman of the Bar Council, Advocate Vasantrao Bhosle. Our Bar Council of India Vice Chairman and the member of Bar Council of India from Maharashtra and Goa, Advocate Satish Deshmukh. Today's lecturer and one of the most renowned criminal lawyer, trial lawyer of the entire Maharashtra state, my dear friend, Advocate Harshad Nimbalkar. All my colleagues from Bar Council. Here I want to mention that the BLEP program was very successfully conducted for 2 weeks. Near about some 20 hours, the program has been conducted, 2 hours per day, 2.5 hours per day. And the very positively, this responsibility has been shared by my all coordinators of the CLIP, for whom I give this recognition. I must mention their name: Sujit Pathak from Mumbai, Shabnam Kazi Madam from Mumbai, Virarkar from Thane, Sujata Jadhav Madam from Thane, our Ganesh Pawarji from Solapur, then Himangi Pathare Madam from Mumbai, then also Anushka Madam, and with this a very able academic leadership given to us, all of us, by our respected Sir Dr. A.C. Awad sir and also Sir Dr. Rajendra Anbule. They are doing their best for the fraternity on the platform of a Bar Council, and we, on behalf of entire Bar Council, are thankful to you for doing a wonderful job. I'm proud of you because ultimately you all are the product of our CLEP program, and we feel that we must express now the thanks also to you. It's not a formal, but from the bottom of my heart. Also, the welcome to all you participants who are already the participants of the various CLEP programs in our various other organized programs. Friends, you know the importance of the CLEP. We started right back in 2007 with a small number, 150, 80 people used to participate, and now we have reached up to 450 people, because when last program was organized in December 2019 in a Powai, in the premises of the Maharashtra National University, Mumbai, there were 450 participants. Some of you must be present there. So you know the importance of this CLEP program. It is a platform of an interaction. Not only that, some senior advocates are sharing their experience or their knowledge. It is also an opportunity of all we speakers to correct ourselves. Because this is a profession where perhaps I have, it's shown my perception and experience that we carry some baggage. I know this. I know civil procedure code very well. I know the criminal procedure code. I know this concept of the trial. I know the concept of the jurisprudence. But after practicing 10, 20, 25, 30, 35 years, when we go for the lecture and when we make a study, we found that there is a change. and we want to correct ourselves. We get an opportunity to correct ourselves. And that will be an experience of my all colleagues, senior friends, including today's speaker, Arshad Nimbalkar, because the law is not a stagnant thing, friends. It goes on changing. It goes on changing as per the need of the society. And therefore, the law changes. The sections are same, but the interpretation is different. The case laws are different. The previous jurisprudence is slightly deviated, suitable to the current situation. This happens because the law is not a stagnant thing. And therefore, when we are passing through such a phase of a life, Corona phase, when we all are affected, one has to give a good positive thinking to the mind. And the lawyer who is working every day for near about 8, 10, 15 hours is sitting at home. He is locked down. And in this lockdown situation, what is the responsibility of a bar council has been shared by our chairman very ably. He explained it. We are concerned for you, dear advocate brothers and sisters. What is the role of a bar council? It's a role which a senior plays for a junior. It's a collective role. You can say that a collective seniority is the responsibility of a bar council, and collective role of a senior advocate should be discharged by the bar council. For that purpose, the bar council has been established under the Advocate Act. And therefore, when we talk about this, we have to consider the need of an hour. We have to see whether the really such a needs are there that we should provide them some grocery also. Because ultimately, what is the earning of a bar council, friends? You know the Advocate Act. It is an only enrollment amount which a junior pays to the bar council, through which we have to organize the meetings, we have to maintain the staff, their salary, their entire functioning, we have to organize the programs, we have to see towards the insurance. We don't get any financial help from the government. It's not provided there, neither government is willing to give that. Though there is repeated efforts done by the Bar Council in the last 25 years. And we'll do it, and we are sure that we'll be able to do that. On this backdrop, while introducing now this academic, again the innovative platform for you of a CLEP online, where near about I've seen that 900 participants have joined till this moment. I congratulate you to show your positiveness, your enthusiasm towards the interaction on a legal matters, friends. And I also make you appeal that it is our responsibility to collectively create a welfare fund. Perhaps our Vice Chairman, Vasantrao Bhosle, will talk on that particular subject of creating a welfare fund, or even a Satish Deshmukh sir is there, he will talk, and therefore I'm not taking you much time on this particular issue. But it is only collectively we can support each other. We will not depend on any government machinery. We'll try our best. But we 175,000 lawyers will see that any needy advocate of this state of Maharashtra and Goa should not suffer. We don't know what will be the lockdown time. We don't know whether the virus will go or not. We don't know whether one virus will remain or some another virus will come there. We don't know anything, but we will face it. And for that, the collective courage is the responsibility of a bar council, which will give you, and you should be cooperatively participating in the movements of the bar council. That is only the one first initial appeal which I want to do. Since now 2007, when this CLEP program is organized, we have developed this CLEP program. Many eminent speakers have joined us. Honorable Justice Bhushan Gavai, the judge of the Supreme Court, he's one of the mentor and is keenly concerned about the activity. We called him as a guardian of a bar council. He's there. Honorable Justice Abhay Oak, who is our mentor, how to work, how dedicatedly we should work, how we should be concerned for the young lawyers, how we should be concerned for the interacting on a legal issue. He has given us thought. Honorable Justice R.C. Chaman, who is a Pitamaha of this Maharashtra judiciary, is every day a concern for the judiciary. Now he's in fact a retired judge. He can sit at his home ideally, but he's not sitting. He's still working for 15 hours for the judiciary without any expectation. So all these peoples are there. Justice Pukhraj Bora, many names I can tell, who have contributed to this system. And therefore they are with us. In fact, it is expected that if time permits and if it is possible, they will address you all in a short time on these online lectures. And they will make you aware that what is the situation, what is going on in Supreme Court, what schemes they are bringing. Supreme Court is bringing now a policy of e-governance. And that e-governance, as per Supreme Court, is a need of the hour. The lawyer should not waste time every time in a court hall. The witnesses should not be held up, and it should be a planned scientific working of the judicial system with the use of the technology. We have to cooperate them. We have to make a second. Unless bar make a second, it's not possible, friends. So bar will make a second to them and will try to do a best out of that, because system should survive. It should not happen that the crowded courts should be the rooms of the virus spreading mechanism. We have to avoid it, but at the same time, the courts must function. So we have to find out some solution, and in a short time, that will get, and I'm sure in a very short time, Justice R.C. Chavan will come on this platform and will explain what is the plan of the e-governance, and we will work out, we'll make a positive response to them. Friends, this CLEP platform is therefore created for you to have a best opportunity to interact. In a Marathi, we call संकटामध्ये संधी शोधायची असते. संकटाला संधीमध्ये जे रूपांतरित करतात ती यशस्वी होतात. And what is ultimately life? Life cannot be said to be always a passage of a very fair and good things in a life. It's a combination of the bad and good events in the life, friends. Yesterday morning, my son, Advocate Ajinkya, has given me one video of a very famous philosopher in India, Shivakya. And he was talking that life is full of choices and compromise. I'll share that video to all of you. You should go through it. He said that life is full of choices and compromise. And what is a choice? Choice is yours. In a lockdown, whether you should sit and sleep and eat and get a disease, choice is yours. Whether you should try to live with a discipline, have an early walk, have a less food, have a good quality food, and to do some academic work, choice is yours. If you are working on a civil site, whether you should see the bare act of the Civil Procedure Code and start from section 1 and end up to order 51, appendix A to H, choice is yours. This opportunity is not going to get it. It's not easy to read that all 158 sections and 51 orders and that rules in a normal life. It's choice available to you, friends. The choice is yours. If you're working in a criminal side, whether think of after leaving the law college, whether you have read a bare act in general from section 1 to whatever the sections of IPC are there, and collectively given a thought, what is the scheme of an Indian Penal Code, why it is designed so, give it a thoughtfully thought of that entire thing, choice is yours. So he says that life is full of choices and life is full of compromises also. So the question is that which choice is to be chosen is your choice. And that best opportunity is here, friends. And he told that, remember, once you make a choice, then that choice chooses to control your life. Once you make a choice, that choice chooses to control your life. Then it is not in your hand. You may have a good choice, you may have a bad choice. You may drink, you may smoke, choice is yours. Once you make this choice, you may invite to cancer, you may invite to liver some disease. You may have a good lifestyle. You are healthy, choice is yours. Ultimately, after your choice, that choice will control your life. So which choice is to be taken, that is in your hand. Thereafter, nothing is in your hand, friends. Very good philosophy, simple philosophy. So what is a success? He says that choosing a good choice is a success. And selecting a bad choice is a failure, because that creates a failure in a life. For that purpose, you should have this opportunity by providing this platform, by explaining some experience of the law, that this is a choice available to you to think, thought, and learn the law in this particular manner. The choice is provided by the Bar Council. Whether this choice is to be seriously taken and further carry forward is your choice. You can make that choice. Ultimately, after that choice, bad things or good things, whatever will happen, that will happen in your life. I personally feel that as an individual, this is a best opportunity to the lawyer. He may suffer something, he may not have an earning this time, but the main investment capital of the lawyer after black coat is his brain, his knowledge, his interaction on the particular subject, thinking differently on that particular subject. If you start thinking, working differently on your given subject of a practice, perhaps you are a different lawyer now. So post era of coronavirus, the lawyer who will use this opportunity perfectly will be a different lawyer. I'm sure. He will be more precise, he will be more perfect, he will be more appreciable if he makes good choices. And that choices are with you, friends. We are providing some of the choices for you by requesting all the eminent speakers to share their experience with you. They may tell you their way of life. They may share their way of successes. They may share with their difficulties. They may share their failures also, some of the failures also. Out of that, you have to choose the way of working, way of life, which will make you successful. And therefore, without taking time, because the today's speaker, Mr. Nimbalkar, is already there to deliver a lecture, we don't want to take a time, but I will make an appeal to all these CLEP participants, because friends, when it is a blip, the new enrolled lawyers are there in that particular program. So what we are talking, they may have a less understanding on that particular topic because they have not participated in a program. You have participated in program. You have experience what is the benefit of the CLEP, how it helps you in a practice, how it gives you a proper directions. Most of 80% of the participants have given us a feedback in last 13 years that this help us to give a different vision. It has helped me to take a different vision. Every lecture from every speaker, I have taken something somewhere which was an addition to me. Nothing lost was there. By sitting 4 days or 2 days in a CLEP program, every time some addition was there in my knowledge and in my vision also. So it's a question of getting your vision clarified during this lockdown period. We will provide you many lectures. If you are ready to participate, many speakers are there who are ready to share their experiences. The question is that how you respond. And as a senior guide bar council members, we all bar council members are with you. You may have any difficulty, you may have any need, you should communicate to your bar. The bar will communicate to the guardian member, and guardian member will communicate to the bar council, will try to solve your any problem. If anybody gets, it's helpful. We are collectively together. And therefore, I thanks Honorable Chairman, our Honorable Vice Chairman for organizing this CLEP and giving interactive opportunity with all my my club participants who are strong to each other. Therefore, with the period, I will make honorable coordinators, all coordinators, that spare your more time and more interactive actions. Call the all of speakers and try to do not only for 2 days a week. It may be 4 days at more convenient time after completing of the BLEP also. So all the best. Don't get depressed because of the lockdown. It is an opportunity for a lawyer to make you a perfect lawyer. So all the best for that purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, we had a maximum cap of 1,000 participants, and we have reached the maximum cap. So the program before it starts has been successful. We have been able to achieve the maximum limit. So thank you for the participants for joining. Now moving forward. Now I request Advocate Ganesh Pawar, one of the coordinators, to introduce our resource person for the day, Honorable Shri Harshad Nimbalkar, sir.
Thanks, Sujit. Good afternoon, all of you. Good afternoon, sir. It gives me an immense pleasure to introduce such a great personality, Advocate Harshad Vasantrao Nimbalkar, sir, who is born on 3rd of September 1960 and has completed BSc, DBM and LLB. He is practicing as an advocate since 1984 in the District and Sessions Court, Pune. He specializes on criminal side and has conducted more than 3,000 sessions cases in various sessions courts at Pune, Baramati, Ahmednagar, Aurangabad, Solapur, Satara, Sangli, Kolhapur, Alibag, Beed, Jalgaon, Mumbai, Nashik, Thane, Usmanabad, etc. places. Also, he has been appointed in numerous cases by state government of Maharashtra as special public prosecutor at various places. He was appointed by MSEB to represent them before the Madra Devi Stampede Commission of Inquiry conducted by Justice Sri Kochar. He has appeared and argued before the Supreme Court of India and in the High Court of Bombay at Bombay, Aurangabad, Nagpur, and also at Delhi. He was appointed as amicus curiae by the Supreme Court in the appeal and confirmation matter of General Vaidya murder case, and wherein his performance was specially appreciated by the Supreme Court in the judgment reported in AR 1992 Supreme Court, page number 2100. He was elected as Vice President of Pune Bar Association in 1991 and President of Pune Bar Association in 2001. He is President of Young Lawyers Forum since 1996 and has conducted and organized various seminars and conferences in the legal and social fields. In 1996, he organized seminar on AIDS and law, and in 1998, he organized a seminar on environmental laws. Also, he has attended various conferences and seminars in India. He was elected as member of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa from 2002 to 2009, 2004 to 2009. Thereafter, in 2009 to 2018, and in 2019 also, he has been elected as member of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa. He was chairman of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa from in 2006, from 24th June 2006 to 1st of July 2007. Also, he was again unanimously elected as chairman of Bar Council of Maharashtra Goa on 31st May of 2015, and he is the first person after late Ramarao Adik who re-elected as chairman for the second time of Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa. In his tenure as chairman, he organized state-level conference and continuous legal education program, and recently organized state-level conference at Aklus Taluka, which received a overwhelming response. Sir has been appointed as special public prosecutor in numerous cases, and sir has vast experience of conducting criminal trials on defense side as well as a prosecutor, special public prosecutor. It will be a treat for us to have lecture of Harshad Nimbalkar sir on criminal law. Sir has delivered various lectures at in various CREP programs and elsewhere also. Sir has delivered guest lectures in Symbiosis Law College, DES and ILS Law College, Bharati Vidyapith, Yashwantrao Chavan Law College, and other law colleges also. The biodata of sir is very much large, but I curtail myself as we are all are eager to hear sir on the topic, and hence I request sir to start with his lecture. Harshad Nimbalkar sir.
Good afternoon, friends. The Honorable Chairman of the Bar Council of Maharashtra and Goa, Shri Subhash Ghadge, Honorable Vice Chairman, Shri Bhosle, the Member of the Bar Council of India, my friend Satish Deshmukh, then the Chairman of the CLEP Committee, my dear friend Shri Jayantrao Zaibave, all other esteemed colleagues in the Bar Council, senior and junior advocates, ladies and gentlemen. It gives me immense pleasure to be with all of you this afternoon. The topic that we are going to discuss is defenses in criminal trial. Now, all of you are practicing advocates. Some of you might have conducted session trial or criminal trial on your own, or might have conducted it along with your senior or along with your colleague, etc. So all of you are having some or the other knowledge in respect of criminal trials. I am not a lecturer and you are not the students. All of us are lawyers. According to me, and it is my conception, that everybody is a student of law. Nobody can be said to be perfect in the field of law. Even the great Ram Jethmalani used to say that I am a student of law and I will remain a student of law till I die. And therefore, all that we have had is a little bit of experience in conducting these types of cases. And therefore, today I would share with you some of my experiences and discuss this trial, discuss on criminal trial. Now, friends, there are two types of cases. One instituted upon a police report and the other instituted otherwise than on police report. The cases instituted otherwise than on police report, in normal parlance, we call them as private cases. Now, these private cases are directly filed in the court of magistrate. Sometimes the police do not take cognizance, and therefore a party directly goes, complainant directly goes before the magistrate, files the complaint. The magistrate, after going through the complaint, if he finds that there is prima facie substance in the complaint, then he may proceed to issue process under section 204 of the Criminal Procedure Code. He may also postpone the issuance of process under section 202 and ask the complainant to give evidence on oath, or ask him to bring his witnesses and examine those witnesses. But today we are not going to deal with these private cases or cases instituted otherwise than on police report. Today we would be considering cases which are instituted on a police report, which in normal parlance we call as the police case. Now, anybody can set the criminal law in motion. If a person is having knowledge about an incident, or if a person has seen the incident, is a witness to the incident, he or she can go to the police station and inform about the incident to the police. It is the duty of the officer in charge of the police station to record it in writing. Either he may record it himself or direct his subordinate officer to record it in writing. After it is written down, the complainant is read over the said statement, his signature is obtained, he is given a copy of the said complaint, or we may call it as first information report, and it is the duty of the officer in charge of the police station to reduce the substance of the said information in a book which is maintained in the police station as per the direction of the state government, which in normal parlance we call it as the station diary. Therefore, once the information is given, the information may be oral information, which is reduced into writing by the officer in charge of the police station, or may even be a written information, a written statement. After the information is received, an offense is registered, and after registering the offense, the investigating officer starts investigating the case. Now, what is investigation? The investigating officer would go to the spot of the incident, visualize the spot of the incident in the presence of two independent persons who are termed as panchas, and in their presence, the entire spot is written down. What are the directions? What are the distances? Everything is written down in the Panchanama. If there are any incriminating articles like blood, or there may be some cloth on the, stained with blood, there may be blood stained stones, there may be pieces of glasses, there may be chappal of the accused, of the complainant, of the witness, or of the deceased himself. All these incriminating articles are seized and they are mentioned in the Panchanama, the spot Panchanama. If it is a case of death under section 302, then the inquest Panchanama of the dead body is drawn by the police officer. All the injuries on the person of the dead body are written in that Panchanama. Then the accused is arrested. While in police custody, he may make a statement before the police that he is ready to produce the clothes which were on his person at the time of the incident, or he is ready to produce the weapon which has used at the time of the incident. Therefore, a memorandum statement is taken down. The accused, along with the panchas and the police, go to the spot where he has hidden the weapon or the clothes. The discovery Panchanama is drawn. If it is a case under 326, 325, 327, etc., where there is no death, then the injury certificate, the victim is sent for the medical examination. His injury certificates are collected by the investigating agency. If it is a case of murder, then the body is sent for post-mortem examination, and the post-mortem report is collected by the investigating officer. All the incriminating articles are sent to the chemical analyzer for his report, and after the receipt of the chemical analyzer's report, if the investigating officer feels that there is sufficient evidence, then he files the charge sheet in the court of the magistrate. Now, after this charge sheet is filed in the court of the magistrate, it is the duty of the magistrate to hand over the copy of the charge sheet to the accused free of cost. Now, this charge sheet contains all the evidence that is there against the accused. This is the base in a criminal trial. If the case is not triable by the court of session and triable by the court of magistrate, the magistrate would proceed to frame charge against the accused, and thereafter the evidence of the witnesses will be recorded by the magistrate. If it is a case which is exclusively triable by the court of session, like a murder case, a rape case, a dacoity case, etc., then the magistrate commits the case to the court of session, and after it is committed to the court of session, the session judge frames charge against the accused. If the accused applies for discharge, his discharge application is considered, or otherwise the court frames charge against the accused. The accused is asked whether he himself admits the guilt or not. More often than not, in almost 99% of the cases, the accused pleads not guilty, and thereafter the trial begins. Now, friends, as you might be aware, it is the public prosecutor who conducts the prosecution in a criminal case or a sessions trial. And on the basis of the charge sheet, the names of the witnesses are mentioned in the charge sheet. It is the sweet will of the public prosecutor as to which witnesses are to be examined by him. Nobody can force him to examine any other witness. And it is his sweet choice as to which witness is examined first in point of time, and what is the sequence of examination of the witnesses. And therefore, it is the public prosecutor who carries out the examination in chief of these witnesses, and the defense counsel cross-examines each and every witness. Now, friends, this cross-examination, to which I'll come later, is very important for a defense lawyer. Now, if a client comes to you, if he wants to engage you to defend him in a criminal trial, the first and foremost thing that you would do is you collect a charge sheet from him. The charge sheet consists all the statements recorded during the course of investigation under section 161 of the CRPC. It contains all the panchanamas, the inquest panchanama, the spot panchanama, the panchanama under section 27 of recovery or discovery, as it may be, the various medical reports, then in case of death, the post-mortem report, everything it contains, the charge sheet. Now, what I read twice, but at least every reading, you may find that you gain something more, some more knowledge you gain by reading it every time. In a criminal trial, you should be master of the facts. The facts should be always at the back of your mind. Only and only if you are master of facts, you will be able to conduct the trial properly and do justice to your client. When you actually conduct cross-examination, if you are knowing all the facts by heart, then you can twist the case in a given situation. And therefore, you should be master of the facts, and therefore you should read the charge sheet for more than 3 times at least. What I do, friends, is that I prepare a chart. So you should actually take down the points in writing. Write down, take a notebook and write down the points. What I do is I prepare a chart. In that I write the date, place and time of the incident, then the names of all the accused, their date of arrest, name of the complainant, name of the disease, names of all the witnesses, what the witnesses tell against a particular accused, that you have to write down. There may be contradictory statements made by different witnesses in respect of a particular accused. Then the panchanamas, which are the panchanamas, who are the panch witnesses, what is incriminating in that panchanama, or the timings of the panchanama. All this is very much material, and therefore prepare a chart. This will be always handy to you when you actually conduct the case. You must know your strong points and you must know your weak points. Write down your strong points on one page. Write down all your weak points on one page. Which points you have to develop during trial. You should know all this before you start the trial. And therefore, all these important things should be on a piece of paper or in a notebook after you read the charge sheet, because after all, the case is based on the charge sheet itself, which we call as the final report submitted under section 173 of the Criminal Procedure Code. You may also go and visit the spot in important cases, in cases of 302, etc. Many times, I also go and see the spot of the incident. If you know the spot of the incident, you are in a better position, better equipped to conduct the case, because the spot of the incident is in your memory. And when you cross-examine the witnesses, then you are yourself knowing about the topography of the incident. And the topography would always help you, whether a witness would be in a position to see the incident from a particular place or not, whether the witness would be in a position to reach near the place of the incident from his house or not, and whether he is really an eyewitness to the incident or not, whether really such an incident could have occurred, which is a prosecution case, whether it could really have happened at that particular place or not. All these facts can be judged properly after you see the spot of the incident. And therefore, sometimes it is very important. Now, friends, after you read the charge sheet and note everything in the notebook, and after you see the spot of the incident, sometimes what is most important is taking the instructions from the client. That is very important in a criminal trial. In a criminal trial, you should always know the truth. If you know the truth, it will be very helpful for you to take a proper defense. Learning real facts would be essential in order to strike out a proper defense. Friends, many a time the client does not tell you the truth, or he may tell you half truth. You have to dig out the truth from the client. You have to dig out instructions from the client. Sometimes he is in jail. Therefore, you have to take instructions from the other persons who come to you. His friends, his relatives, family members, they may come and instruct you. But you should also take instructions from the client, even if he is in jail. What I do is, I ask the accused to write down the instructions and give it to me on the point of the incident. I asked him to give the true version of the incident, and also about the motive, if there is earlier incident, if he knows about the witnesses. It is always important to know about the witnesses who are going to depose against the accused in evidence, their information about the panchas. All these things you have to collect from the accused. So I ask him to write everything. Then I go through all these instructions and then again question him on some important points. You should be fully satisfied in respect of the instructions to be received from the client. Remember, sometimes even some small or insignificant point which you feel at the time of taking instruction may help you in the ultimate analysis at the trial. Sometimes some trivial things you feel that they are trivial, but no, believe me, it is my personal experience that some small insignificant instructions created an opening in the trial during cross-examination. It is insignificant, but if it is true, and if the witness knows about it, then he also feels that it is insignificant. Let us give an admission. He gives that admission, and then you can enter and create an opening. Friends, whatever defense you take, it is important that you cross-examine the witness properly in line with them. Try to make best of the instructions you take from the accused and the facts from the charge sheet before you take a proper defense. So here is the charge sheet and the points. Here are the instructions before you. Then the next step is to chart out a proper defense. Taking a proper defense is the most important thing in a criminal trial. But then, as I told you, you should cross-examine the witness accordingly, and it should be in accordance with the defense that you take. Cross-examination, friend, is the most important weapon in the armory of a defense counsel, and therefore it should be used judiciously and properly. A performance in the cross-examination does not tolerate mistake. Avoid cross-examination only for the sake of cross-examination. There are some people who ask cross-examination only for the sake of gallery or to please your client who is sitting behind you, the paymaster. Don't do that. If it is absolutely necessary, only then ask cross-examination. Because in a criminal trial, it is the duty of the prosecution to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt. There is no duty on the accused to prove his innocence. An accused can also remain silent. Sometimes in a criminal trial, silence is more than golden. So avoid indiscreet or reckless cross-examination. Unnecessary cross-examination can dig a grave in many cases. I've seen it. And therefore, friends, don't cross-examine for the sake of cross-examination, because cross-examination is a performance which will never tolerate mistakes. You should know where to stop during cross-examination. You should know what not to ask in a cross-examination, which very few people know, according to me. What not to ask, very few people know. Cross-examination is an art. Some are born with it, but some develop it through hard work also. You can develop it through hard work also. You can develop it through experience also. Now I will give you an example in which had happened in the Sessions Court at Pune. An advocate who was about 5-6 years in practice was cross-examining a witness, an eyewitness to the incident. He was the only eyewitness to the incident. The prosecution case was that the eyewitness was going on a bicycle on the road. The incident had occurred during the night time between 9 or 9:15 p.m. He was going on the bicycle. On the opposite side of the road, he saw A and B were fighting with each other, quarreling with each other, and A removed a knife and stabbed B in his stomach. He thereafter immediately turned, went to the police station and reported about it to the police. Thereafter, since the accused was unknown to him, he was put up for identification parade, and during identification parade, he had identified the accused. That was the case of the prosecution. Now, the cross-examiner was cross-examining this eyewitness. In the spot Panchanama, there was no electric pole at the spot of the incident. There was no tube light, etc. So there was no source of light on the road. And therefore, the cross-examiner asked the question that to the eyewitness, look here, there was no tube light or electric pole on the spot. He was a truthful witness. He answered in the affirmative. Now, this was there in the Panchanama, but then the advocate wanted to ask it. No harm in asking. He asked that question. He got it on the record. Now, here, he should have kept mum and argued at the time of argument that, sir, the spot Panchanama says there is no source of electricity, no light. The witness admits there is no light. He is unknown to the accused. Therefore, how could he would have identified him in the identification parade, and therefore the identification parade is doubtful. It was a farce, and he could have got the benefit of doubt. But he did not wait there. He thought that he would get further admissions, and therefore the next question that he asked to the witness was that because there was no source of light and it was dark, you could not see the face of the assailant. And the witness immediately realized, and he answered that no, there, from the opposite side there was a four-wheeler coming, car, and due to the focus of the front light of the four-wheeler, I could see the face of the assailant. And therefore what he did, he dug his own grave. That question was not necessary to have been asked, but he did not know where to stop, and therefore he suffered and got a conviction. And therefore, friend, you should know where to stop during cross-examination. Sometimes you have to strategize your theory in defense. Sometimes a witness may give you a very good admission. Now, some cross-examiners ask the same question to the next witness. It is not necessary to ask the same question to the next witness, because if you have an admission, you can make use of it at the time of arguments. Sometimes the next witness becomes alert, or the public prosecutor makes him alert about a particular point, and he may give explanation to the question which may wash out the earlier admission you have taken from the earlier witness. And therefore, do not do that. So also, you should know what not to ask in cross-examination. I'll give you one more example. I was in practice for about maybe 5-6 years. It must be the end of the 1980s. Fortunately, I got to conduct session cases very early within the first year of my practice, and I continued conducting session cases because of my seniors and all. But then I was conducting a rape trial. I was defending 2 accused, and another advocate was representing the 3rd accused in a rape trial. The prosecutrix in the examination in chief had not stated that any accused had removed her clothes from her person. She was totally silent on that point as to whether any accused had removed her clothes before the rape. Now I cross-examined the witness and I finished the cross-examination. Thereafter, the other advocate who was representing the 3rd accused rose for cross-examination. It was his first session trial. He had conducted criminal case, first session trial. Therefore, he was wearing gown and all, and he wanted to cross-examine the witnesses. Now, he stood up. He asked first 2 questions, and the 3rd question that he asked, and I remember his wordings. He asked the witness, कि ये आरोपी ने, he was asking in Hindi, ये आरोपी ने तुम्हारा वस्त्र हरण कैसा किया? These are the words used by him. I tried to pull his gown, but he did not budge. He was on his legs, he did not budge. He again asked the question, बताओ तुम्हारा वस्त्र हरण कैसे किया? The judge was a senior judge, Mr. Barve, who was a very good judge. I conducted a number of trials. In fact, he was one of the judges, Barve and Mr. Dhakepalkar, who have, in fact, made me what I am today. N.A. Barve was the judge. He cautioned him that, look here, counsel, the witness has not stated anything about it. Why do you want to cross-examine her? He said, no, sir, it is very important. I want to cross-examine. And he cross-examined her. He asked the same question again, and she gave the entire explanation. And then his client suffered. The person later on became a judge, a magistrate, after 5 years. Now it is a different thing that he was thereafter dismissed from the judiciary. But then the point is, friends, that you should know what not to ask in cross-examination. If the witness has not stated anything in the examination in chief, you need not ask about it in the cross-examination. That is some, as I told you, silence is sometimes more than golden in a criminal trial, because it is for the prosecution to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt. In a civil case, mere preponderance of probability is sufficient. But in a criminal trial, a higher degree of assurance is required, and the prosecution has to prove its case beyond reasonable doubt. So also, the accused is entitled to the benefit of doubt, and therefore, in a criminal trial, you should leave things sometimes as they are. Now, what are the defenses that can be taken in a criminal trial? The best defense that is taken is that of total denial. Why? Because I told you, it is for the prosecution to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt. You can deny everything. If there are 2 types of cases, where there is direct evidence, where there are eyewitness, etc., and where the case rests on circumstantial evidence. So if it is a case of direct evidence, if there are eyewitnesses, then your defense is he or she is not eyewitness to the incident. They have not seen the incident. They were not present at the spot or near about the spot, or they have come later on. They are planted witnesses by the prosecution. They are interested witnesses. They are inimical witnesses, or due to some special reason, they are deposing against the accused at the trial. So total denial is the best defense that is taken during a session trial or criminal trial, because the accused is entitled to the benefit of doubt. and prosecution has to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt. If it is a case of circumstantial evidence, believe me, you witnesses, believe me, you, in number of heinous cases, heinous crimes, the only evidence obtainable is circumstantial in nature. Take all big cases. Joshi Abhyankar murder case, Sharat Sarda case, Naina Pujari case, even I think the famous case from Delhi, Nirbhaya case. So, in heinous crimes, there is no direct evidence available, and therefore the evidence obtainable is circumstantial in nature. Now, what is circumstantial evidence? Evidence on the point of motive, evidence on the point of last seen together, evidence on the point of extrajudicial confession, evidence on the point of recovery or discovery under section 27, when the accused discovers something in pursuance of the statement made by him before the police, dying declaration, so on and so forth. So in such type of cases where there is circumstantial evidence, the burden on the prosecution is more to prove the case beyond reasonable doubt, because there is no eyewitness to the incident. Now, therefore, the best defense in such type of cases is total denial. You deny that the accused had a motive to commit the offense. You deny that the accused and the deceased were last seen together at a particular point of time. Of course, you can develop that there was a large time gap between the last seen point and the time of death. So, you can also deny that the accused made a statement while he was in police custody and thereafter took the panchas and police and discovered the weapon or the clothes which he was wearing at the time of the incident. You deny that he gave a confessional statement to a witness, extrajudicial confession, etc. So you can deny all the circumstances, because in cases rested on circumstantial evidence, not only the duty of the prosecution to prove all the circumstances on which they rely, but they have to form a chain so complete that the only hypothesis is that of the guilt of the accused. It should be inconsistent with the innocence of the accused. And therefore, since the burden is more on the prosecution, this is the best defense available, that is total denial. Now, in a criminal case, along with the defense of denial, you can also take an alternative defense. This is available only in criminal cases. Because, friends, in a criminal case, the accused is not bound by his pleadings. In a civil case, the parties are bound by their pleadings. But in a criminal case, the accused is not bound by his pleading. Even if accused takes a particular defense earlier, or maybe during the bail application if a particular defense is taken, maybe alibi, it is not necessary that accused should take the same defense at the time of trial. Accused can also change the defense during the course of the trial. If a particular suggestion is given to a witness, earlier witness, and if during the cross-examination of the next witness, if certain admissions are brought on record, you can change your suggestion. You can change your defense during the course of the trial. This can be done only in a criminal trial. And therefore, I was telling you that alternate defense can be taken by an accused in a criminal trial. Now, this alternate defense can be taken directly by the accused, or it can also be gathered by the court from the surrounding circumstances, like right of private defense, grave and sudden provocation, intention not to commit murder, alibi. All these defenses, they can be directly taken or can be taken alternatively as well. The court can gather these from the attending circumstances through cross-examination, through evidence that has been collected. The court can come to the conclusion, no, well, here he is having the right of private defense from the cross-examination. and the court can gather and give the benefit of doubt accused from these attending circumstances as well. And therefore, you may take a positive defense or you may take an alternate defense. Now, I'll give you a best example of an alternate defense. That is rape case. Best example of alternate defense is rape case. In a rape case, you normally take a defense of denial, that the accused has not committed rape, not committed sexual offense without her consent, etc., not kidnapped her, not abducted her, etc. But at the same time, during cross-examination, you develop the theory of consent. So consent is the best alternate defense in a rape case. You ask questions to the prosecutrix on the point of consent. Because after all, you know Vardarajan's case, the most famous case of the Supreme Court. In that case, the Supreme Court said that if the boy and the girl know what is good and bad for them, then it will be only a case of consent. There are a number of cases of consent. In fact, nowadays, there are so many love affairs, and during that love affair, the boy and girl indulges into into sex, because there is no, nowadays the taboo is not there, social taboo, which was there earlier. And therefore, they may indulge into sexual relationship. But later on, the girl may file complaint. Sometimes the boy promises for marriage and thereafter doesn't marry her. And therefore, the girl may file a complaint of rape against him. So then you can develop the theory of consent during cross-examination. You may have photographs of the two of them, letters, cheats, messages, SMSs, WhatsApp messages, so on and so forth. You take instructions from your client and then develop the theory of consent in cross-examination. Nowadays, there are live-in relationships as well. People stay together without marriage, and thereafter, if there is dispute on some financial arrangement of some money matters, then the lady may go and file complaint against the person of rape. And in that case also you can develop the consent during cross-examination, theory of consent. And therefore, in number of rape cases during cross-examination, you develop the theory of consent. That is, and then the court may gather it from the attending circumstances and give you the benefit of doubt. Therefore, this is the best example of alternate defense. Therefore, you can take defense of total denial as well as alternate defense of consent in a rape case. Now, which are the stages during which this defense is taken? There are 4 stages, friends. First is during the cross-examination. You you ask questions in respect of the defense during cross-examination. That is the first stage. The second stage is when you give suggestions at the end of the cross-examination. When you put up your case, you give suggestions. That is the stage when you can take defense. The third stage is you may take defense during the statement under 313, when the judge asks you question after, as you know, when the prosecution finishes with his witnesses, then the accused is called by the judge and the incrementing parts of the evidence are put to the accused by the judge directly, which we call as a statement under 330. And thereafter, he also gives explanation in respect of the incident or in respect of the prosecution case. He gives explanation. The judge asks him question, then asks him whether you want to examine yourself on oath, whether you want to examine witnesses in your defense, or whether you want to state anything else. So at that time, also, he can state to the court in respect of his defense. And therefore, that is the third stage. And the fourth stage is when you examine defense witnesses in your defense. If you take so sometimes defense of maybe alibi or maybe right of private defense, etc., you may examine witnesses in your defense. But of course, Only if there is documentary evidence, then you should examine witnesses in defense. That is my advice to you. Normally, avoid examining witnesses for the defense. Only and only when it is extremely necessary, only then examine defense witnesses. Because defense witnesses are available to the prosecution for cross-examination, and sometimes it may strengthen the case of the prosecution. The witnesses may give admissions in the accused may, or witnesses of the accused may give admission in cross-examination and spoil your case. So only if it is necessary, examine defense witnesses, and on one point, ask the examine the minimum number of witnesses on one particular point. So those are the stages when you can take defense. These are the 4 stages when you can take defense. Now, as I told you, a positive defense can be taken or alternate defense can be. Now we'll go to the next defense which can be taken in a criminal trial. The next defense is right of private defense. Now, when you take such positive defenses, you should explain the client before taking this defense. It is better that you consult him, because later on, during the statement under 313, he also has to narrate about this defense, to which I'll come later on. So the second defense would be right of private defense. Now, this can be taken directly or can be gathered by the court from attending circumstances also. The right of private defense can be directly taken in respect of one's body or in respect of the property. If there is imminent danger or threat to one's life, then he or she can take the right of private defense. As long as the danger is there, the right exists in respect of the body as well as in respect of the property. But then you have read the charge sheet. There should be circumstances to take such a defense. Bare words are not sufficient. There should be something, some direct or indirect corroboration should be there. Now, for example, if there are injuries on the person of the accused, then you can take, and there is medical evidence in respect of those injuries, then you can take the right of private defense. Or if there are counter cases or cross cases, as they say, then in that case, the right of private defense is the best defense, because you cannot deny your presence at the time of the incident. Now, what are cross cases? Cross cases are for the same incident, both sides lodged complaints for the same set of facts, for the same incident. And these cross cases where both sides have received injuries, these cross cases are heard together by the court, one after the other, simultaneously or one after the other. The arguments are also heard one after the other, and the judgment is also delivered by the same judge, one after the other on the same day. One case may be under 302 and the other case may not be a session tribal case. Even then, the other case is also committed to the court of session, and both the cases are heard by the same presiding officer or the judge. These are the cross cases. Now, therefore, in cross case, you cannot say that because if you are injured and witness in the other case, counter case, you cannot say that I was not present there at the spot. And therefore, total denial defense may not be proper. And therefore, the defense that you have to take is right of private defense. Now, but when you take a defense of right of private defense, the burden of proving that there was a right and you exercise your right of private defense is on the accused. The burden of proving this plea which the accused takes is on the accused. But still the burden of proving the entire case is on the prosecution. So if the accused takes a plea or a defense, only to the extent of proving that plea or that defense, the burden shifts on the accused, not the burden of the entire case. In fact, in the words of the Supreme Court, even if the accused takes a palpably false defense, even then the prosecution is not absolved of its duty to prove the case beyond it. Now I will give you an example of a case which I had conducted. I had conducted a session case at Baramati. It was a counter case. The accused that I was defending were accused in a case of murder, 302, and the complainant party against them, the case was under section 326 of the IPC. But both were heard together being counter cases. The prosecution case was that the agricultural land of the accused and the agricultural land of the deceased were adjacent to each other. And the agricultural land of the accused and the agricultural land of the deceased were next to each other, and there was a common road. There was a road to go to the agricultural land of the accused. Now, according to the prosecution, this road or cart road belonged to the prosecution witnesses. And according to the accused, it was a common road. There was a civil litigation pending, and the civil court had given a finding that the accused can use that cart road for going to their fields, provided they inform the police station about it 1 day prior to going there. Now, the prosecution evidence was that on the day of the incident, the accused persons were going in a tractor by that common road. They were armed with weapons. The prosecution witnesses were working in their field, and when the accused were going by that road, they started abusing the witnesses and the deceased by seeing them working in the field. There was some exchange of abuses, and thereafter the accused who were carrying weapons got down from the tractor and assaulted the deceased, the complainant and the other witnesses, in which the deceased died and the others received injuries. The defense of the accused was that there was sugarcane crop in their field, and therefore they were going to cut the sugarcane crop at the relevant time. They had intimated the police station about it on the earlier day in the evening. And when they were, on the day of the incident, when they were going by the tractor, in the trolley, there were other workers also who they had engaged for the purpose of cutting the sugarcane. And they had that particular weapon which is used in this particular area, Baramati, Indapur, Sholapur, etc., which is like a chopper which they use for cutting the sugarcane crop. And they were carrying this weapon. Now, when they were going by this common cart road, the witnesses and the complainants saw them coming, and therefore they were angry. They were aggrieved. And they stopped the tractor. They started abusing the accused. After some exchange of abuse, they pulled the accused down from the tractor and started assaulting them with the weapons which they are like sticks, axes, etc. They started assaulting the accused. And the accused were acting in their self-defense or right of private defense. The workers who were there along with the accused also tried to protect the accused from the assault which was mooted by the complainant and the other witnesses. And while the accused were acting in their self-defense, the deceased and the witnesses might have received the injuries. So this was right of private defense directly taken. Now, I told you that you should cross-examine the witnesses in line with the defense. Now, accordingly, during cross-examination, we had got admissions in cross-examination. Even from the doctor, I got the admissions that the injuries that were there on the person of the accused were possible due to axe and sticks, because they assaulted us with axe and sticks. That was our defense. Then by that weapon like chopper, etc., the injuries on the person of the disease are possible. All these admissions we got from the doctor, and therefore it strengthened our defense. And we could point out to the court at the time of arguments that the complainant party was aggrieved because we were going by that road. According to them, that road belonged to them and not a common road. Complainant party was aggrieved because we got the injunction order from the civil court. They were the aggressors. They stopped us. They started the assault, and therefore we were within our right. And if in a cross case, the court sees as to who is the aggressors, who have started the assault. And from medical evidence and from the attending circumstances, we could point out to the court that we were acting in our self-defense, and the injuries that were caused to the witnesses were only in self-defense. And moreover, they had not said anything about the injuries on the person of the accused. It is the duty of the witnesses to explain the injuries on the person of the accused, which they had not done. And therefore, we got the benefit of doubt and all the accused were acquitted. Therefore, we have to develop the theory during cross-examination, and we could get our accused acquitted. Now, we will discuss the next defense. So the next defense is that of alibi. Now here again, alibi has to be proved by the defense. What is alibi? Alibi means the accused was not present at the spot of the incident where the incident occurred, but was present somewhere else, elsewhere. But here the burden is on the accused to show that he absolutely cannot be present at the place of the incident physically. That has to be shown by the accused. And therefore, the onus to prove this alibi shifts on the accused, although the burden to prove the entire case is still on the prosecution. Merely the onus shifts. Now, when accused takes a particular plea or defense, although he has to prove that defense, but the burden is not as high as the burden on the prosecution. The burden is like that of a civil case. Merely on the preponderance of probabilities, the accused has to show that this defense is proved by him. Only he has to prove on the preponderance of probability, not absolutely, as is the case of the prosecution. If there is documentary evidence, then it is easier to establish this plea of alibi. If there are contemporaneous documents on record, like if the accused is in jail, or he is an indoor patient in a hospital, or he is in a government office, etc. Then through documents you can show that I was not present at the spot of the incident, I was present at a particular place. Nowadays, of course, due to the CCTV footage, electronic evidence, etc., the accused may be in a position to show that I was present in a particular place. He may be able to prove through the CCTV footage that he was present at a particular place and not at the place of the incident. I will give you an example of a very famous case that had taken place in Sholapur. We were conducting the trial on behalf of the defense. In Sholapur, there was a famous person. He was an MLA of Indi, which is 1 hour's distance from Solapur. There were two rival gangs. I was conducting this case along with my senior. There were two rival gangs. The MLA and his accomplices were accused in a murder case. they had committed the murder of the person of the rival gang. The incident had occurred at around 1 to 1:10 p.m. in the afternoon. The deceased was sitting on the ota of his house, which is abutting the lane. The other witnesses also sitting, and he was chit-chatting. The prosecution case was that 2 accused came on a motorcycle. They were followed by the other 7 accused in a Maruti van. The motorcycle came and stopped near the deceased, who was sitting on the ota for a moment. The pillion rider shot at the deceased from his firearm, from his revolver. The deceased received the bullet injury. He succumbed to it. The motorcycle immediately went away. The persons who were following the motorcycle in the Maruti van, they stopped in the chowk. That area belonged to the rival party. They entered a small hotel come shop there with hockey sticks and swords. They ransacked the hotel and went away. That was the case of the prosecution. Now, 3-4 eyewitnesses were examined at the trial. They had stated that they had seen the incident, etc. We had cross-examined them on various points, on their conduct, on the point of medical evidence, contradictions, omissions, so on and so forth. But 3 accused had taken the plea of alibi. One accused had taken the plea that on the day of the incident, he had been to Pune and he visited the Office of Food Corporation of India at Koregaon Park. There he had made an entry. We produced those documents, etc. on record and took the plea of alibi. The second accused had taken a plea that on the day of the incident, he was at Hyderabad. He had stayed in a hotel, a lodge there at Hyderabad, and during his stay there, he had visited a doctor because he was suffering from loose motions, and there was a prescription of the doctor available with us. We had actually gone and seen the place at Hyderabad, the hotel. We had ourselves seen that registered, verified the register, etc., the entries, etc. We had produced the register in the court, examined witness produced that prescription, etc., in defense. And therefore, that was the plea taken by him. The third accused had taken a very interesting plea. He was one of the principal offenders, the brother of the MLA. He had taken the plea, and the shooter, he had taken the plea that on the day of the incident, he had been to his native place at Indi, which is a taluka place, and there he was present in the court and had given bail in the court of the magistrate. There was a pending case against him under 324. There was a non-bailable warrant, and he had actually given bail on that day in the court. We had examined the police prosecutor who had given say to his bail application. We had examined the clerk of the court as defense witnesses. Now, believe me, the court discarded the plea of alibi in respect of all the 3 accused. All the 3 alibis were held not proved by the court. Even in respect of the plea of alibi taken by the principal accused that he was in the Indi court and gave bail, the learned session judge gave the finding that, well, the incident had occurred between 1 and 1:10 p.m. The accused might have gone to India after the incident and might have given bail at 3 p.m. During those